Welcome to the new Kino cave. So if you've been following my previous videos, you'll know that I was in the process of moving, so that's why the videos have been a little less regular. Hopefully, now that I'm in my new home, I'll be back to more regular videos from this video on. And today, I'm finally continuing with the X-Men reviews with the Wolverine. This film is kind of the black sheep of the franchise, I feel. It's always the one that you never really hear talked about because the first X-Men was the first one. X2 is regarded as probably the best of those early movies. X-Men 3 is kind of hilarious in a way. X-Men Origins Wolverine is a complete dumpster fire. X-Men First Class is kind of the underappreciated one, and so on and so forth. The Wolverine is one of those films where it was good, and when it came out people said it was good, but it's not really very well remembered. I don't think there's enough in this movie to really latch onto and talk about as much, except for when we come back to it when there's a new one coming out. I really liked this film as a kid, and I think I didn't really rewatch it that much, especially as an adult, mostly because Logan exists, and if you're looking for your fix of Wolverine, Logan is kind of the way to go, and if you kind of just want to laugh about it, X-Men Origins is kind of the way to go there. So the Wolverine is one of those ones where maybe I should rewatch it more because it is very good. Getting into the actual review, I really like how this film adapts a lot of the Japanese era of the Wolverine comic books. It kind of tries to be this ultimate Wolverine movie by trying to really sum up his character and carry on from his X-Men days. I feel that this film definitely lacks personal depth. I think that that's the reason why people don't tend to talk about this movie as much as some of the other X-Men films. I just find that this film is all about plot and not enough about character. Every scene, every conversation, it's all to move the plot forward. I think it's a misconception in movies that every line of dialogue needs to advance the plot. I don't think it does. I think we really need to get to know the characters more, and this film unfortunately didn't do that for me. I do like that this film doesn't ignore the previous movies. I like how it carries on from X-Men 3 and gets into Logan's headspace following on from that film. A lot of these kind of comic book movies, especially nowadays, like to ignore the ones that weren't very well received, like, Thor the Dark World or something like that. But with this film, even though X-Men 3 wasn't that great and it was very heavily panned when it came out, this film still chooses to carry on from that and find gold in that coal mine. I think probably my favorite aspect of this film is the Japanese influence. I was reading some IMDb trivia after watching the film, and while I can't remember the names now, there were some Japanese films that heavily influenced James Mangold's kind of style and a little bit of the story. But what I saw a lot of in this from the Japanese films that I've seen, I saw a lot of influences from Akira Kurosawa, and I even saw little kind of influences from Masaki Kobayashi, especially to do with the film Harakiri, which in my opinion is the best samurai movie. But a film that I think really influences this movie, and again, Mangold cites these other films which I haven't seen yet unfortunately, but they're definitely on my list. I see a lot of influence from Yojimbo. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing all these Japanese names. But Yojimbo is very much, it's an Akira Kurosawa film about a lone samurai who enters a new land and has to kind of make this sort of choice between sticking to himself or helping the people of the village. And I think that that's very much a running theme throughout the Wolverine. So I saw that connection. I don't know if that was intended by Mangold, but either way I think it's really cool. I think if the relationship between Logan and Mariko was given more attention, it could have been like one of the best couples in comic book films. But unfortunately, she's obviously not in the rest of the franchise at all. And again, going back to the lack of personal depth in this film, I think there's just not enough of that between Logan and Mariko. And it sucks because it's you know, a pretty heavy relationship for Logan in the comic books, and I would have liked to seen more of that, but alas, we got what we got. So my biggest issue with this film by far is Viper, and I'm imagining if you haven't seen the film recently, you probably don't even know what I'm talking about. Viper is one of the villains. She's kind of the secondary villain of the story, and she's a nothing character. Every scene she's in, she's basically explaining who she is and what she does. There's not enough of a good, fun character there to compensate for the lack of depth. So I don't really know why she's in this movie. I suspect that it's because the studio wanted a hot blonde white girl in this movie because it's set mostly in Japan. And they're like, there's not enough white people in this Hollywood movie, so that's my guess. It's a very cynical viewpoint, but considering Viper's character in this, I think the most likely explanation is that the studio really needed more white people in this movie in Japan. This point has been talked to death, but of course the speech given to Logan about how he's going to die, relating to the Logan film, which was also directed by James Mangold. Yeah, it's really good. I don't think it was ever intended, like from the very beginning, that it was going to be holding his daughter's hand, but I do think that James Mangold probably took that scene when he was making Logan and thought he would make the scene in Logan call back to it. And either way, I think it works really, really well. And having seen Logan, it makes that speech so much more poignant. I really like Mangold's directing style in this. I like his directing style in general. Walk the Line is pretty good. Logan is one of my favorite films. The Wolverine is really good, and we won't talk about Indiana Jones. This is just some miscellaneous notes, particularly about the filmmaking of this, but I just find Logan surviving a nuclear bomb to be pretty badass. I think there is definitely an argument to be made about the kind of, say, ethical question of Logan being in Nagasaki when the nuclear bomb dropped and apparently knowing that it happened, but I don't think I'm really an authority on that subject. I have very little relation to any of the political powers involved in that debate, so I'm just going to stay out of it. I think it's pretty cool that he survived a nuclear explosion. I'm impressed that they got Famke Janssen to do so much of her cameo. I think I heard that it was kind of just done over a couple of days, which is obvious because they're all in the one room. But I think after like 6 or 7 years, getting Famke Janssen back to do more filming as Jean Grey, that's pretty impressive. A lot of actors, I feel, nowadays would not do that. Again, another miscellaneous note, but Yashida's bed looks simultaneously like the most comfortable chair in the world, but also the most uncomfortable, horrible piece of shit chair you could ever think to sit in. And I can't decide which. It looks like it would hurt your back, but also it looks like it would fix your back. More filmmaking influences that I noticed, and I'm gonna guess that it's true because it's such a heavy reference. The Blade Runner influences in the urban city of Tokyo. I saw a lot of that, especially when Logan and Mariko were in the Love Hotel. I found it's very, very Blade Runner, I think. Even the building looks like it was taken straight out of Blade Runner, so I'm going to take an educated guess and think that they looked to Blade Runner when they wanted to design some of the buildings in Tokyo. The bullet train fight is one of the more famous things from this movie, and I think it's pretty good. The action and stuff is all really good, the cinematography is pretty good, but I think it does lack personal emotional stakes. I think it's only fair to compare it to the train fight from Spider-Man 2, which is one of the greatest action sequences in any film ever. And I think the reason why that one works so well as opposed to the one from the Wolverine is that there's such personal and emotional stakes to the one with Spider-Man, because the entire train of people can be killed, and there's the personal stakes of Mary Jane being kidnapped and Peter's identity being in jeopardy and all that. And when Peter's getting the shit knocked out of him, he's really getting the shit knocked out of him. He's close to death many times. And I know that Wolverine can't die, but I think Mariko probably should have been in a bit more danger, and there should have been a bit more of a struggle for Logan to get to her, but I think it lacks that, and I think that's the only reason why it doesn't truly work as well as the train fight from Spider-Man 2. this is also a bit of a hot topic, but the Wolverine musculature. Hugh Jackman apparently said that he finally achieved the physique that he actually wanted originally. I think it's too much. I think it's too veiny and defined. I kind of prefer X-Men 1 Wolverine, the body type. For one thing, it's a bit more realistic and you don't have to dehydrate yourself for it. And also, I think it just looks more animalistic compared to, the Wolverine, where he's just like a statue, basically. I absolutely love the fight in Yashida's house where it's at nighttime and they stick the katana in Wolverine's like through him and he pulls it out. Wolverine with a katana is such a cool visual. I cannot get over how awesome it is. And of course then the moment when he finally takes his name back as the Wolverine is so badass. I haven't talked much about Yasuda yet. I think I really like his character, especially towards the beginning, and the kind of the Japanese idea of honor being a large point in it. I think he's a great opposition to Logan in the sense that Yashida refused to die honorably, or at least he'll not die with honor and dignity. He's trying to hold out as much as possible and live as much as possible. You could say that less so for the moments in Nagasaki. I think most people probably would do what he did, but even when he's an old man, he still cannot accept death. And I think it's juxtaposed so well to Logan's theme in this movie of refusing to live with honor, refusing to use his powers to help people like he did with the X-Men. After Jean Grey died, he lost all his honor, and it takes fighting with Yashida to get it back properly. All that being said, the fight with Yashida at the end is lame as hell. Again, this is the biggest complaint about the Wolverine, is that the third act is not great, and it's in no way compares to the rest of the film. And yes, that's all true, but I kind of want to get into what I think would have worked better. I think what would have fit with the tone of the first two acts of this movie is that if Yashida wasn't in a big Transformers fucking robot suit, if he just had like silver samurai armor and it wasn't like a robot situation, and say he had already taken some of Wolverine's DNA and made himself young and all that kind of thing, and Wolverine and Yashida just have a katana like sword fight, like the ending of a samurai movie, I think that would have worked so much better. It would have been so much more satisfying than just Transformers, basically. Which I'm gonna again take an educated guess. This was between Transformers 3 and Transformers 4. Those movies were making a shitload of money, and I think that the X-Men franchise really wanted to just profit off of the idea of robots. So, again, cynical point of view, but I can only say that based on what I've seen in the film. So, I think that a good fix that would fit with the rest of the tone of the film would have been Yashida in a regular samurai armor, just silver, and Wolverine having a katana fight. I think that would have been much more satisfying. And so, that is my review of the Wolverine. I really hope you enjoyed this video. There'll be another video, hopefully a bit more regular, and the next X-Men movie is Days of Future Past, which is going to be a really interesting one to talk about. I hope you guys like the new setup. Trying to get more stuff in the background here and stop using the TV because it's really annoying to have to set that up. So I hope you enjoy the new Kino cave, and I hope to shoot many more videos in this new set. So like, subscribe, and I hope you're having a really great day.